Hi, this is Aaron Marcus. Welcome back to the summit. And I have just an incredible master teacher and singer and actor that we're going to be talking with who could potentially change your life. Her name is Nancy Krebs. And along with having been an actor and a singer for over 15 years, she's also a certified LeSac master teacher, and she has worked as a vocal and dialect coach for numerous professional and university productions. And she also offers both private in-person and online coaching as well. So Nancy, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Aaron. It's great to be here with you.
Nancy, so the very first thing I'd like to ask here is people talk about dialects and accents, and I know they get used improperly. Would you tell us exactly what are the differences between the accent and the dialect?
Well, that's a great question. I think people use them interchangeably, and there's nothing wrong with using them interchangeably, but I think the prevailing thought is, at least from my perspective, is that the dialect is the way one speaks English from your native language. In other words, it's English as a second language. So it becomes a dialect of English because you're coming from, say, a French background or a German background. So you're speaking English as a dialect. But then we have what we call the accent. Now, what's the accent then? The accent would be, I'm speaking German as a dialect from Bavaria, right, from that part of German. So it's going to have some slightly different nuances, some slightly different sounds, or maybe some of the S's maybe become SH, for instance. So that would be the accented dialect. Does that
And
make
so,
sense?
yeah, so like for instance, in the U.S., somebody's, who's living in Birmingham, Alabama will have a different type of accent than
Right.
somebody living in
New
Miami
York,
or
right, or New York City, or Phoenix, Arizona. So we're all speaking the same dialect. We're speaking American English. That's the dialect. But we all have a different or a slightly different treatment of that dialect depending on the region that we live in.
so basically, you come to this from a very different perspective than a lot of other people, where you really, well, maybe I should just let you explain it, but basically, you really come to this from a physical point of view
Right.
as well. Well, let me just have you explain it because you can do it much better than I can.
Sure, sure. Well, Arthur Lessac, the man who wrote the book from which I teach, he created a book called The Use and Training of the Human Voice, believed that we actually learn better through the senses rather than through imitation, through rote drill, like do it over and over and over again, or outside imagery, or ear training. These are not the ways that we can improve our voices or our bodies the way they optimally want to function. The best way to learn is through something that you can teach yourself through the senses. And that way it will always be fresh, it'll always be yours, it will not be something you're imitating from somebody else. So when I'm dealing with people learning accents or dialects for a production or just because they want to learn how to do this, for a film, for television, it doesn't matter what it is, I approach it from the physical aspect of first they have to recognize what the accent or the dialect feels like. So, meaning in their mouth, what does it feel like when you produce the sounds? What does the melody feel like when you're doing it? What does the resonance feel like? What do the vowels and the consonant changes feel like, rather than listening for something? However, when you're doing dialect work, you're always sort of approaching it from hearing as well as feeling, because you have to recognize that there are differences first in the way, say, for instance, that standard British man sounds as opposed to the way you sound. You recognize that there's a difference. But after you recognize the difference, then you approach it from the feeling. And it's infallible, absolutely infallible.
And so I guess when you have a physical technique that you can go to, then you're not just doing things by chance and trying to remember what something sounded like,
Oh, you're right.
which certainly can change from day to day. And if you're, doing a theater piece and you're required to do the correct sound every single night, you're not doing it by chance.
No, you're not. And that's one of the beauties of doing the Lesac kinesensic training to teach dialects, because the people that I work with actually learn what the difference feels like as they're producing it, and then they memorize the feeling of it, the sound is going to take care of itself. If you've learned how to feel it, and it's the repetition of feeling that over and over again is going to embed it in yourself and in your sense memory, in your physical memory, and you're going to be able to manufacture it each and every time. It's really it's a lot of fun also.
Well, what I would love to do here in probably the next 15 minutes is be a guinea pig.
Mm.
And and just for the record, I've never attempted to learn any kind of separate dialect or accent, and that's never been a real strong point for me. But what I would love to be able to do with you right now is just have you walk me through the process. And certainly I understand this is something that takes a long time to work on, but just so people can get a sense of what this technique is really all about. And I know we had talked prior to this interview, maybe a standard upper class British type
Hmm.
of, now that would be a dialect?
Well, yes, it's a dialect. The one that we're dealing with right now, and I took the liberty of sending you a study guide ahead of time just so you could look it over. Standard British is what they refer to as RP, or received pronunciation. This is the accent that people will use when they are doing Noel Coward, when they're doing Oscar Wilde, when they're doing lots of different kind of mannered comedies of a certain era, as well as serious drama of a certain era. It was the accent that was actually spoken at Eton, Cambridge, and Oxford. That's where it actually came from. It was a way for British society to sort of be homogenized. Everybody wanted to sound the same. They were going to be the rulers of the realm. So they were received in the best houses. In other words, they could go to the front door and be received. Another definition of received pronunciation is at one point in time the British Empire was so large that it encompassed almost the entire world, right? So the sun never set on the British Empire. So you could be received, meaning understood, anywhere in the British Empire if you had this particular accent or dialect, okay? So
Okay.
what I'm going to attempt to do with you in the next few minutes is to get you to feel your way through this. And you've already warned me that there could be some stumblings along the way, but just treat it like it's a rehearsal. Treat it like it's a lesson. And like all students, we don't expect, perfection the first time. We're hoping that you will learn the process, and by learning the process, you'll be able to continue to work on it by yourself and with your coach to refine it.
So no
Uh,
detention. I don't have to stay after school.
no, you don't have to stay after school today. No,
Okay.
maybe another day. Okay.
Don't have to write on the blackboard 500 times.
No, you do not.
Okay. So
Are you ready?
where do we actually begin?
Where do we begin? Okay, so to teach an accent to anybody or a dialect, what we need to do is we define four categories. The first is resonance. Where do you feel the majority of the vibration as you're producing the sound in order to sound authentic? So there's resonance is one category. The second component is musicality. What are the internal or external kinds of melodies that we hear in that accent? Thirdly, the substitution of vowels, and then the substitution of consonants. Now, the first thing we want to approach is the resonance. Where do you feel the vibration? So I'm going to ask you to do a couple of experiments, okay? So I'm
Okay.
going to ask you to simply, because I know you're an actor and you can do this, is simply to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and especially at 4, I want you to really open up and feel where in your mouth, on the hard palate, you feel the strongest vibration. So would you just very slowly, in your big theater voice, you might want to back up a little, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then locate where you feel that vibration. So
Okay.
your turn.
All right, let's give that one a try. And actually, I think at some points I should probably kind of turn and look at you and look off the camera a little bit because that might help me with this process. Okay.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Where do you feel especially on 4, on your hard palate, where do you feel the majority of the vibrations?
Ooh, I'm I'm thinking, was it in the middle or
Good
towards
answer.
the okay, kind of like
Good
it
answer.
felt like it was towards the front middle of my palate.
Great. Which means you have a very good focused voice. All right, Aaron. I would expect that from you, as I do with most actors. So, yes, that is where American resonance is, right in the middle. All right. British standard dialect or accent is more towards the front. I mean, really close to the front, right in between where your lip and your upper teeth are, including the gum ridge, the upper gum ridge. So in order to create that difference in resonance, we're going to sort of move everything forward facially. I would like you to say this. Shh, shh. Right. So this posture that you have right there, shh. Now add a little voice to it so it becomes zzz. You feel that vibration in the
Yeah,
front?
yeah.
That's where the Brits feel their vibration when they're speaking. So if you hold on to this facial posture of shh and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, things are going to change. You're going to start to feel the resonance in the front, and the vowels will actually change as a result. But let's not worry about the vowels. Let's simply focus on feeling that forward resonance. So I'm going to ask you to, after me, just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, keeping your face in that sort of shh posture. Your turn.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Notice it's different.
Yes.
Isn't it different? Now do it again. This time really concentrate on feeling the sort of urging forward of your lips. Your turn.
1, 2, 3. Now, am I still concentrating on the 4 or trying to do it with all the numbers?
With all the numbers, but the
Okay.
4 is going to be most obvious to you.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Very good. I'm sure that anybody who's listening to you right now can detect that you sound different. Already you sound different. All right, so that's the change in resonance. All right, so from now on, every time I ask you to do something, I might say, now add in the resonance, add in the feeling of it being in the front like this. Because when I do
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I keep everything right here, things start to change. All right. So I'm going to ask you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with your face in this sort of forward posture. Your turn.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Now everybody's all going, ooh, ah, he sounds different. All right. All right. That's step 1. Step 2 is the melody. All right. Americans have a melody that's pretty flat. It's not very expressive. In standard British, it's extremely expressive. British people, even today, even if they're not doing standard British, usually stress words by use of pitch change. Men, I'll have to say, American men, change their stress on words by volume. They'll say, I'm going to the store. A British man will say, I'm going to the store. So he's going to change the pitch in order to tell you what word he wants to emphasize. So now we're going to do a couple of melodies. If you look at your page for a second, just look down and pick it up for a moment. There
Yep.
are really 2 melodies that we use in standard British, and these are so much fun. Okay, you're going to have a good time. So the first melody is what we use for commands or statements of fact or questions that are answering the who, what, why, where, and when. So the question is, why did you ask him to leave? So I'm going to show you what the first melody is. It starts low, it pops up, and it descends downward with a down glide at the end. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you, and then I'm going to ask you to do it after me, okay? Why did you ask him to leave? Do you hear what I'm doing? I'm going bum, 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 bum. So I did change the vowel to ask because I know better. But you don't have to change that right now. Just keep that focus in the front and repeat that melody. Why did
Why
you ask him to leave?
why did you ask him to leave?
Right, and do it again and recognize that you are really going higher in pitch on the word did, and then from that point onward, you're descending downward. Your turn.
Why did you ask him to leave?
Yes, very good. Let's do the next one. There's a second sentence, which is, but Who was Edward talking to?
But who was Edward talking to?
Very good. Now, the last one is a simple command. It starts at the very highest point and it drifts down in pitch in descending order. Go and open the window.
It sounds like a song. It really does.
Yes, it does. It's very melodic.
Go and open the window.
That's right. So you're going to find this tune one, as I said before, used usually for questions that are like who, but who was Edward talking to? Where are you going? That sort of thing. Or a sort of a command. Go and open the window. You people over there. All right? Now there's a second melody. And that is when you are asking a question that requires a yes or a no. All right? So it's going to start low, and then it's going to pop up high, go in descending order, but it's going to upglide at the end, and I'll demonstrate for you. But is he the only man who can do it? So that's a question of yes or no. Yes, it requires a yes or no. But is he the only man who can do it? So can you see what that melody is?
Yes.
Your
But
turn.
is he the only man who can do it?
Yes. Now do it once more with this focus. Put that sort of shh posture. But is he the only man who can do it?
But is he the only man who can do it?
Yes, very good, very good. And the next one is, will you go and open the window?
Will you go and open the window?
Do you see Tom waving?
Do you see Tom waving?
Do you see Tom waving?
Do you see Tom? That one didn't feel quite as right to me.
And you know why? Because you didn't go low enough on the word you. Do
Yes.
you see Tom waving?
So the do is still heading
Sort of,
up.
it's sort of in the middle. Do you? Now, when I change the operative or when I change the stress word, now it's going to be the one that glides all the way to the bottom and slides up. Do you see Tom waving?
Do you see Tom waving?
Now we're going to change the operative to the word see. Do you see Tom waving?
Do you see Tom waving?
Right. And if we change it to Tom, it would be, do you see Tom waving?
Do you see Tom waving?
Yeah, do you feel what's happening there?
Yeah.
There's
If,
almost
I
a,
feel like my whole face is changing. I feel like I'm, have this very serious kind of, I mean, I'm not looking at my face, but it just feels very serious and
Mhm.
upper crust and not that much fun of a guy to hang out with. Uh,
Not at the moment. He'll
wow.
loosen up in time, okay? He'll loosen up in time.
Well, look,
Now,
I know, this is something that we would be spending a tremendous amount of time on. Uh,
mhm.
this is incredible, though. I mean,
Yeah, it's really
I could,
fun.
like, certainly I'm not going to be going to an audition after 3 minutes here and, telling people, oh, yeah, of course I could do this. But I could feel a difference.
Mhm.
I could feel there's a certain pattern, there's a certain technique that I would be
Yeah.
grabbing. There's a certain feel inside my mouth, which, like
Mhm.
I said, it also changes my face. At
Yes,
least,
it does.
I mean, once again, I can't see it, but it feels that way to me,
Mhm.
and that's incredible.
It's really
That's
lots of fun. You know, the first time I meet with actors, like I'm going to be starting with Boeing in just a few weeks with Rep Stage in Columbia, and Boeing is a romp around Europe. It really is. There's a woman who speaks a German accent, then there's Italian, there's French, and then there's New York. So I mean, it's like all over the map, which I really love. I love those kinds of things, and I usually spend between 45 minutes and an hour with each actor the first time I meet with him or her. And we lay out the entire, what I call laying the groundwork, so that I've already sent them the work ahead of time, so they can look at it and sort of peruse, and listen to the samples and kind of get a feel for it. And then in that 45 minutes, I go through exactly what I'm doing with you, but we go into the vowel changes, into the consonant changes, so I cover the whole thing in that 45 minutes to an hour. And then I come back periodically throughout the process. I listen to them read from the script once they get more familiar with the dialect and the accent. And then I see them for the designer run and I take notes. Then I see them, if I need to see them again, I will. Then after that, I see the final dress and then a preview with an audience. So I actually go through the entire rehearsal process with the actors. That's what a coach does.
Hmm.
I'm really coaching. I'm helping them to feel comfortable. I'm helping them to feel consistent. Because I have a really good ear, and I'm the one person that never reads the script after the first time because I don't want to be familiar with the script. I
Right.
want to be that sort of pair of independent ears, like that deaf old lady in the back row, who's
That's,
picking out all the problem areas, who can't hear this or can't understand
right.
that. That's my job.
Hey, Vanessa, let me wind this one down because I know I'm seeing here that there are a bunch of questions that have come in, and I do want to spend some time allowing people to ask you some questions.
Okay.
Here's one from Julio in Miami. He's an American with a heavy Mexican accent, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
due to his accent, I'm not being considered for a lot of roles that I physically look right for.
Yeah.
You've talked about learning a dialect. How difficult is it to lose one?
As difficult as it is to gain one, right? So we're doing it in the reverse, right? Because Julio actually has to learn how to do an American accent because he already speaks English. It's obvious he already speaks English, but his challenge is to make himself sound more mainstream American rather than someone that is obviously from somewhere else. Now, depending on when Julio came here to the United States, he may always retain a certain amount of his accent. He just might. But if he has a really good ear and really has a vested interest in becoming more generically American sounding, he will attend to this really seriously, and he'll have to learn how to modify certain aspects of what he already possesses. One of the things I love about working with accent modification or reduction is I never want somebody to feel like he or she has to lose his or her accent unless he or she really wants to. And in his case, it would be in his best interest to at least modify some of the aspects of the thickness of his accent so that he sounds more able to come from nowhere and yet somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. As you were saying it, I was also thinking, instead of getting rid of, I think another way to view it is just add something else
Yeah.
to be able to offer people. Certainly don't lose it
Right.
because you might want to be able to, use the accent that you currently have. That could be very
Correct.
helpful to you.
Absolutely. It also makes you feel like you're not good enough. If you feel like I have to lose this, I have to lose this part of myself. But on the other hand, he wants to become more acceptable in the mainstream media so that he isn't always calling attention to his roots. So he wants to become a chameleon, and in becoming a chameleon, we have to learn how to sort of soften some of the aspects of his own native accent so that he can pick up the others.
Let me actually this one's interesting. Um, this is from Allison in Nashville. Um, is it any easier or harder for someone to learn a new dialect if they are singing the words as opposed to just speaking the lines?
Say that question again.
The question, this is from Allison in Nashville. She
Mhm.
wanted to know if it was any easier or harder for someone to learn a new dialect if they are singing the words as opposed to just speaking lines. And I don't know
I-
if she means doing opera as opposed to just reading, straight lines from a play,
or musical.
or perhaps a
If she's doing
musical.
a
Yeah, do you
musical.
find, is there any difference as far as whether it's easier or more difficult?
No, it's not. I wouldn't say it is. Matter of fact, the Lesac work is very musical in and of itself. I mean, Arthur used to say, when you speak, do you feel like you're singing? When you walk, do you feel like you're dancing? So there's a rhythm and a melody all involved in everything that we do as far as our teaching is concerned. I would always apply everything that I'm doing from my speaking voice into my singing voice and vice versa. So if she's more adept as a singer, she's going to find dialect work really easy because of her skills as a singer. But I wouldn't necessarily say that she's going to learn the dialect easier by singing the words as opposed to by speaking the words. I think they're equally they have their own challenges. Each has its own challenges. Because oftentimes when she's singing, she's going to be much more open with the vowels. She's going to have to. Matter of fact, we should always sing in the dialect that we speak in. Let's say we're doing a British musical. We shouldn't automatically sound American when we start singing. We should sound British singing, and vice versa. We should, if we're doing an American, musical, we shouldn't sound weird when we're singing. It should sound like the same voice.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a really good question. I'd have to maybe think about that a little longer, but my first instinct is to say, no, I think learning to speak it first, then apply it to the singing is probably the best way to go.
Okay, great. Um, Actually, this is from Lars in Sweden. Are there certain dialects that are harder to learn or lose than others?
And she's from Sweden?
Yes, I don't know if Lars is a guy
Oh,
or
Lars.
a
Yeah,
woman.
Lars. I'm sorry, I thought you said Laura. No, Lars. Yeah, it's either Swedish. Yeah. Um, Depends on where you're from, I would think, because Swedish, the language of the Swedes, there may be like the German languages, the French, many of the European languages, I think would be easier for him to learn how to do. An American accent would probably be easy for him to do, but some of the Middle Eastern and the Far Eastern accents and dialects would be more difficult for him to learn. I know they are for me because
Is that
just
just because
immediately,
they're so different
yeah,
than
yeah, they're
what they're
very,
used
very
to?
different, and they're also tonal, meaning that there are pitch variations in within the languages that would designate one word as versus another. In other words, to our ear, they would sound exactly the same, but because of the pitch change, it means a whole different word.
Got it.
So we'd have to get very used to pitching our voices in certain ways to make sure that we are keeping in tune with what they would mean when they were speaking. If that makes sense to you.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, Nancy, we're really at the end of the session. I wanted to thank you
Oh.
so much. This was incredible. I also wanted to ask for people who would like to get in touch with you, because you do online coaching as well as in-person coaching. What is the best way for people to be able to reach you?
Well, I do have a website, www.nancyKrebs.com, and all of my contact information is right there. So if they want a phone number, if they want a fax, if they want an email, they can get it right from the website. That's the easiest thing to do.
Fantastic. Nancy, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the lesson. We're going to take just a couple of minute break, and then we'll be back with the summit. Nancy, thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.